We all face it, whether it's physical pain, emotional hardship, or the simple reality of growing old. But in Buddhism, suffering has a deeper meaning. It's not just about the pain we feel. It's about understanding why we suffer and what we can do about it. In Buddhism, we call this suffering dukkha. This word doesn't only mean pain or sadness. It's more like a sense of dissatisfaction with life. Even when things seem to go well, we may feel something is missing. Have you ever achieved a goal only to feel empty afterward? That's dukkha. It's like an itch we can't quite scratch. Now let me explain why we experience this. According to the Buddha, the root of suffering lies in three things: craving, aversion, and ignorance. Craving is when we want something so badly that we can't enjoy what we already have. Aversion is when we try to avoid things we don't like, even though they are part of life. And ignorance? That's not understanding the true nature of the world, of ourselves, and of our connection to everything around us. Imagine holding a glass of water. If you grip it too tightly, your hand starts to hurt. If you let go completely, the glass falls and breaks. But if you hold it lightly and carefully, you can enjoy it without harm. Craving and aversion are like gripping too tightly or letting go too suddenly. Ignorance is not knowing how to hold the glass at all. Buddhism teaches that suffering is not permanent. It's not something we are doomed to endure forever. It arises, it stays for a while, and then it fades. This is called the cycle of arising and passing away. When we truly understand this, we start to let go of our attachment to things that cause us pain. Now, you might wonder, if suffering is inevitable, what's the solution? The Buddha taught something called the Noble Eightfold Path. It's a guide to living a balanced life and finding peace. The path includes things like right understanding, right speech, and right action. These are practical steps we can take every day to reduce suffering in our lives and in the lives of others. The first step, though, is to recognize that suffering exists. It's not about running away from pain or pretending it doesn't happen. Instead, it's about facing it with wisdom and courage. When we do this, we can start to transform our suffering into something meaningful. Now that we've talked about the roots of suffering, let's explore how it manifests in our daily lives. Many people think suffering only happens during big, tragic events. But the truth is, suffering can be subtle, like a quiet background noise we don't always notice. Think about your daily routine. You might feel annoyed when traffic is slow, frustrated when your phone doesn't work, or restless when you're waiting in line. These small moments of discomfort are also forms of dukkha. They're reminders that life doesn't always go the way we want it to. But why do these small things bother us so much? It's because of our expectations. We expect the world to match our desires. When it doesn't, we feel upset. It's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. It doesn't work, and it only leaves us feeling more frustrated. Buddhism teaches us that one way to ease this kind of suffering is by practicing mindfulness. Mindfulness means being fully present in the moment without judgment. It's about noticing our thoughts and feelings, but not letting them control us. When we're mindful, we can see things as they truly are, not just as we wish them to be. For example, Let's say you're stuck in traffic. Instead of getting angry or impatient, take a deep breath. Notice how your body feels. Are your shoulders tense? Is your jaw clenched? Simply being aware of these sensations can help you release them. You might even take this time to appreciate something small, like the way sunlight filters through the trees, or the sound of your favorite song playing on the radio. Another way to reduce suffering is by practicing gratitude. Often we focus on what's wrong in our lives and overlook what's good. But when we take a moment to appreciate the things we do have, like a warm meal, a kind word from a friend, or even the air we breathe, it can shift our perspective. Gratitude doesn't erase our challenges, but it helps us see them in a more balanced way. Remember, suffering isn't just about the big things in life. It's also about how we respond to the little moments, both in our own lives and in the world around us. Finally, there's right mindfulness. As we discussed earlier, mindfulness helps us stay present and connected. It's not just a tool for reducing stress, it's a foundation for living fully and wisely. Now, I know these ideas might seem overwhelming at first, but remember, the Buddha didn't expect us to master them all at once. The path is not a race.
But even when there is suffering, the Buddha said, even when there is suffering, dukkha, that can be a cause for deep meditation, for insight and even enlightenment. If you're having a very difficult time in your life and nothing seems to be going well, and there's always problems and you're not being appreciated and people being critical of you and things aren't going well and you may even be sick and even hospitalized, that is just your body. The body is sick, but it never means that the mind has to be sick. It's bodily suffering. And we can add to that with our emotional suffering. I don't want this. Why does this happen to me? Why is it always me that has to endure all this? People always think like that. But when there is that degree of suffering, obviously if there's something one can do to alleviate it, to lessen it, fine. But sometimes you get to these points, there's nothing really we can do in a difficult situation. But even when there is suffering, the Buddha said, even when there is suffering, dukkha, that can be a cause for deep meditation, for insight and even
my problem with Buddhism was that although so much of what Buddha said made a lot of sense, at the end of the day, Buddha was a human being. And he'd admitted this himself, right? He's just coming up with the best guess that he could, contemplating and thinking and whatever, it came from his own understanding, right? And so he came up with this, the eightfold enlightened path based upon certain principles that he came up with, things that he understood. And he claimed it, in a sense, it's almost like he was saying it's fitra. He says that anyone will understand this, right? But at the end of the day, I was trying to understand what is the purpose of life, why are we here, what's it all for, what's the reason for our existence. And although Buddha comes up with some answers, my real problem at the end of the day was still, well, how do you know? How do you really know, right? How can you be sure? My problem with
don't stop just at the first noble truth. Most people stop at the first noble truth and go, oh, the Buddhists, they're just consumed with suffering. Why do I have to deal with this? And I've got enough problems of my own. You go from the first noble truth to what's called the second noble truth, which actually is really valuable. It's when the psychology part really kicks in. Anybody can see the first noble truth. Just look at your life. Watch Fox News for 10 minutes. Any idiot can see the first noble truth. A yogi has courage to look deeply into the first noble truth to understand its causes. That's the difference. If you stay with it, maybe you have something to learn. The second noble truth is profound. As my work as a psychotherapist, this is the most precious teaching. Don't stop just at the first noble.
Remember, there is nothing in this world that can hurt you as much as your thoughts. And there is nothing in this world that can heal you as much as your thoughts. Namo Buddhaya. Remember, I read a quote that says, your life isn't yours if you worry and care too much about what other people think of you. Namo Buddhaya. I read a quote.
To you, what is the meaning of life?
Once I really heard a sentence that very, very much resonated with me. To not wait until somewhere the sense of life is gonna like float around and you're gonna be ready to grab it. Because what happens if this situation never comes? Or what happens if you see it but you miss it? Does it mean then your life has no sense anymore? The most proper thing is to give a sense to whatever you are doing for yourself. Don't wait for anybody else to tell you what your sense is supposed to be. You give purpose why you wake up.
To you, what is... To you...
What's the show? You with money? I get it. Well, these days, we have ways to... Buddha was a philosopher, a spiritual leader, and is credited as the founder of Buddhism. He was born as Siddhartha Gautama into an aristocratic family in Lumbini, Nepal in 566 BC, and when he was 29 years old, he left the comforts of his home to seek the meaning of the suffering he saw around him, to search for a life beyond life and death. After 6 years of self-mortification, he realized that the search for divinity lies not in worldly things, but in the mind. Thus, he abandoned the way of self-mortification, and instead sat in mindful meditation beneath a Bodhi tree. On the full moon of May, with the rising of the morning star, Siddhartha Gautama became the Buddha. Unavoidable suffering. That suffering could be in the form of pain, illness, or trauma we can all imagine, such as a broken arm, stomach flu, or getting the diagnosis of a terminal disease. Even during childbirth, for example, even though it's supposed to be a joyful occasion, both the mother and baby are in some sort of physical discomfort at first. He then goes on to talk about suffering that comes from milder but common forms of discomfort and distress, like long hours at work, feeling let down by a partner, feeling frustrated, disappointed, hurt, inadequate, depressed, upset, and so on. He includes the suffering that comes from the subtlest qualities of tension in the mind, restlessness, sense of contraction, preoccupation, unease, boredom, a sense of being an isolated self, a fear of aging, According to the Buddha, the origin of suffering as a noble truth is this. It is the craving that produces renewal of being accompanied by enjoyment and lust, and enjoying this and that. In other words, craving for sensual desires, craving for being, craving for non-being. Fortunately, Buddha didn't leave us with just the first noble truth, that there's suffering in life. He also taught us the second, third, and fourth noble truth, which was to identify why we suffer, how we can free ourselves from all the suffering, and the steps we need to take to get there. The second noble truth is samadaya, which refers to the cause, the origin of suffering or dissatisfaction. Representation of the sorrows of samsara, the cycle of rebirth and death. Craving is depicted as a rooster, hatred as a snake, and delusion as a pig. Importantly, they feed off one another, each animal consuming the tail end of the other,
making it a vicious cycle of interdependence. This vicious cycle of all three poisons is something we experience daily, both externally and from within. Our craving to earn more money and buy materialistic things, for example, leads to greed and showcases hatred and anger towards anything that denies them those luxuries. One will go the extra mile to achieve those things and ignore everything else that tells them otherwise. Buddha taught that people whose understanding of life is darkened by ignorance, craving, and aversion condemn themselves to spinning round and round on this wheel, dying only to be reborn in the same suffering state eternally, and therefore cannot reach nirvana. These three poisons are opposed by three wholesome or positive attitudes essential to liberate oneself from this painful cycle of rebirths and reach nirvana. They are generosity, loving-kindness, and wisdom, and all the Buddhist practices are directed towards the cultivation of these virtues and the reduction or destruction of the poisons. Number 3. The truth of Nirodha. The same way a therapist or support group encourages someone to stop smoking by first letting the person know that it can be done. It requires an individual to possess a mental state that can recognize and understand the meaning of their suffering, their craving for cigarettes, and how their craving is further adding to their suffering. By recognizing and reflecting on one's actions and emotions, asking questions about the reason behind the emotions felt helps one gain insights into the root cause of their suffering. Most importantly, this helps gain an understanding of the relationship between craving and suffering. For instance, if one loses a material object or their car suffers damage, they experience dukkha. But what if the person reflected on the emotion by asking themselves questions like, what's the reason behind this suffering? What made me so attached to this object? Why do I feel this way? And why is this act making me suffer? Such thought-provoking questions help individuals gain insights into how our mind craves desires and attachments, and how we can let go of such feelings and emotions. This could start from something as small as not being in a state of unhappiness when we lose a material object or fail to achieve a target. Instead, one can build an attitude of calmness and peacefulness, no matter the consequences. By achieving such insight and understanding, one can eventually let go of cravings and desires. Number 4. The truth of Magga. In our factors that rely on each other, which leads to new insights and understanding, and is marked by discipline and wisdom. The Eightfold Path is divided into 3 disciplines: Pranja, the wisdom path, Sila, the ethical path, and Samadhi, the mental discipline path. The 3 disciplines lead towards a path that can ultimately free a person from samsara. The 3 disciplines are divided into 8 practice areas, each part of a wheel, the 8-spoked Dharma wheel. Buddha's Eightfold Path is explained as Pranja, the wisdom path. Under that we have right view, which emphasizes
RAIN. Recognize, allow, investigate, nurture. So in that state, if you recognize that there's anger, that's the recognition part. Oh, sorry, anxiety.
Yeah.
I recognize there's anxiety in me right now. And allow, I'm not going to fight it, I'm not going to try and get rid of it, I'm not going to turn on the television, or get on the cell phone, or take a drug, or eat something. I'm going to allow it. That's the A part. Investigate is, oh, what is this about? Well, first of all, what does it feel like in my body? Oh, it's butterflies in my belly, tension in my chest, constriction in my throat. Pay attention to it, allow it all, investigate it. And then nurture that little anxious part, which incidentally is just a childhood memory. RAIN.
Don't try to control your emotions or thoughts.
Because the very nature of your mind is such that I don't want to think about this person means that's the only person I'm going to think about for the rest of my life. So, when compulsive thoughts and emotions come, first and foremost thing that you do is, you simply see them for what they are. You don't try to resist them. The moment you resist, they will multiply. In this mind, you don't have subtraction and division. You only have addition and multiplication. Don't try to control your emotions.
Whenever we feel stress, we feel frustration, anger, worry, sadness, loneliness, whatever, what most of us do is we try to focus on the outside world to change something so that we can feel good on the inside. When in reality, we just need to go work on the inside. When life strikes us and we feel that internal reaction to the external world, it's still what's going on inside. How do we release that? How do we let that go?
And what I've learned is there is every moment of your life, little things that create little irritations.
Yes.
The driver's driving 15 miles an hour below the speed limit in front of you and you're in a rush. You will watch your mind cause serious problems. What's the cost-benefit analysis of bothering myself about the driver in front of me? It's not bothering them. I guarantee you, they're not hearing a word you're saying. Those are 100% cost zero benefit.
It's all pain.
So you don't do it. So you learn, and there are lots of techniques. My ultimate teaching, and it's yours also in a sense, is you relax. You just sit there and say, I can relax and breathe. It's okay that this is happening. And then what you're doing is allowing the energy to release. The whole idea is you don't engage with it.
Whenever we feel stress, we feel frustration.
Let's talk about how to become emotionally centered as a man. It's very important as a man to not be overly emotional. It doesn't mean that you don't have emotions. People confuse that all the time, but it means that you don't just express your emotions all the time, that you don't get angry, that you have control of your emotions and control of your actions. The best way to do this is to drop expectations. Drop expectations on people, drop expectations on the world. Don't expect that anyone is going to behave a certain way. Don't expect that things are going to go a certain way. Instead, be open to whatever happens and accept reality for however it is. It doesn't mean that you don't change things. It doesn't mean that you don't take action. It just means that you don't expect things to be good. You don't expect people to behave a certain way. So when they don't behave the way that you want them to, you don't get upset. That's how you're going to keep your cool and not get emotional as a man. Let's talk about how to
Fame.
Try to create a new personal reality as the same personality, and it doesn't work. We literally have to become somebody else. So then you would have to agree with me then that all this information that you're learning today would inspire new thoughts, yes? And new thoughts should lead to new choices, yes? And new choices should lead to new behaviors. And new behaviors should lead to new experiences. And then new experiences should create new emotions, yes? And new emotions should inspire new thoughts, and that's called evolution, yes? So then those emotions that Greg was talking about this morning, the majority of people in the Western world spend the majority of their life living by the hormones of stress. Now, stress is when your body's knocked out of homeostasis. The stress response is what your body innately does to return itself back to order. That's the first definition of resilience. Now, you have three types of stress. You have physical stress, like an injury, an accident, a fall, a trauma. You have chemical stress, like viruses and bacteria and blood sugar levels and heavy metals and hormones and foods and hangovers. And then you have emotional stress, right? Traffic jams and internet connections and second mortgages and single parenting and 401ks. And each one of those things knocks your brain and body out of balance. And all organisms in nature can tolerate short-term stress. If the deer gets chased by a pack of coyotes, if the deer outruns the coyotes, 15 minutes later it goes back to grazing and the stress is over. Human beings are different. We can turn on the stress response just by thought alone. You can begin to think about some future worst case scenario, and because the privilege of human beings is that we can make thought more real than anything else, we can focus on that possibility to the exclusion of everything else. And you can knock your body out of physiological balance just by thought alone, and your body, as the unconscious mind, believes it's in that experience in the present moment. And we can unfold past bitter memories that are tattooed in the recesses of our gray matter, and like magic we bring them to life, and in that moment it's real. And so the hormones of stress long term push the genetic buttons that create disease, and no organism can tolerate living in emergency mode for extended periods of time. So then think about this. You can turn on the stress response just by thought alone. How many people have done that? You've done that? It's called being human, right? And we know that the hormones of stress dysregulate and downregulate genes that create disease. So that means then your thoughts can make you sick. So here's my question. If your thoughts can make you sick, can your thoughts make you well? I'm talking to the right audience. So then, the hormones of stress, though, give the body and brain a rush of energy, and it's like a narcotic.
Can't erase uncertainty. However, you can make it a friend. And that's what I tried to bring out in this book. By the way, I just wanted you to know that just as I ended the writing of this book, before I did all the, the editing and stuff, is when September 11th happened. Wow. And I thought, my gosh, if ever, as you said, there was a book like this needed, it is now. And I went back and it's not necessarily the fear itself, it's how we hold totally. Could you explain that? Yeah. The sense of togetherness, that it was tangible and it was so delicious. And people out on the streets helping each other. Yes, everybody was helping. And it brought out all this beauty in people and the sense that they could make a difference if they contributed something beautiful to the situation. Even little children, selling lemonade on the corner so they could send money to the victims. And it's just beautiful. And that's making something good. Can I quote some things from it? I mean, I just want to talk about this book. I want everyone to know. I mean, he who knows the why of his existence will be able to bear almost any how. And no one can take away your reaction to life. Everything can be taken away from you, but this one thing, which is the last of human freedoms, the ability to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's way, the way in which a man accepts his fate, and the suffering it entails, the way in which he takes up his cross, gives him ample opportunity, even in the most difficult circumstances, to add a deeper meaning to his life. Let's talk about this. I mean, this really is